Icon Comic Con presents Behind the Comic Book Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. 845 here, and we're interviewing more comic book creators, artists, and writers. Check this out. We got Braxton Cosby here with us. He's going to go into a whole bunch of different things that he's up to. But first, we want to make sure that you guys know about Icon Comic Con. It is November the 1st in Fishkill, New York, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. One comic book convention for all fandom. So that being said, everybody, let's get started and let's represent what we do and interview behind the comic book. Braxton, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks for having me on, Raymond. So I call myself a creative because I just love being in the creative scene. Whether it's some acting I've done in the past, some modeling, you end up taking on these characters of what's being required for the set, for the shot, for the film, for the TV, for the commercials, whatever. So I'm creating that character as I go. Also, a novelist. I've written over 20 novels. I've written 5 screenplays. One was a short film that was picked up. And another, I've done, I guess it's, 7 comic scripts now.
Thanks.
So I just love storytelling. I love the art form of it all. I'm an artist as well. I do draw, but on a scale of 1 to 10, compared to the guys who I work with, I would probably be a 5. While they're like 9 or 10s, which I'm fine with because I can at least sketch out the characters and give it to them and let them do better work with it.
Yeah, you do the precursor.
I am. Yeah, I just need to show you head to toe what they look like. You guys take it and run with it. And because I'm in that creative scene in that mode, there's a lot of respect for the creatives out there who I work with. I'm the CEO of Cosby Media Productions. We're a small press company down here in Atlanta. We've published over 30 authors with 60 titles in ebooks, audiobooks, and paperbacks. Also, CEO of Starchild Comics, which is our comic book imprint of the publishing company. And we have over like 6 now groups of artists who we work with, who we hand projects over to with the scripts. They work side by side, our authors, to make sure that the stories represent exactly what that author intended. And we have put out some fantastic comics. We've got some 10 first issues, and we've got some follow-ups now that are out or coming. We've got, of that, we have one graphic novel I'm working on right now. And we also have a compendium, which has pulled together all of our superhero stories that we've written, which is comprised of over 18 novels and 6 different comic books in our own superhero universe,
Nice.
with 6 different authors contributing to that, me being one of them as well. So creative, love story. I read story, I listen to story, I watch story. And the more intricate the characters become, the more fascinated I am with the story. I'm a huge science fiction fan first, but any story will do as long as it's good. It's got all the beats and the points that take you throughout the story. I love anime. Obviously, you can see I've got Goku up in here.
Yeah.
And so, so that's really what I am. I call myself a creator because I don't want to just box myself in as being a novelist or a screenplay writer, or I just want to make sure I just whatever I'm working on, I'm putting together a good story. So it doesn't matter the genre or the medium. It's just about putting out the best story that I think people will enjoy.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So I want to make sure we capture this first and foremost. If people want to support you, they want to be able to follow you, or they wanted to just work with you at some point, how exactly would they do that?
Yeah, best place to go is the hub, CosbyMediaProductions.com. That's productions with an S. There, they'll be able to see everything that we offer. If you just scroll right down the center of the page, you'll be able to find all the genres that we specialize in. We have fiction, we have nonfiction, so we have some biographies, we have some inspirational stories, we have poetry, we have science fiction, young adult fiction, dystopian fiction, and we also have fantasy and, of course, superhero fiction, which I talked about before. So you just click on those tabs and see all the things we have to offer. We have an online store where we actually sell most of our comics that I don't know if you know, but we're a hybrid publisher. So we publish our stories in both novels and comics. So for instance, you may start off in a novel with the origin story of maybe one of our superheroes, but eventually it will matriculate into a comic book which continues the story. It doesn't rewrite anything, but actually
Mhm.
continues. So people who like to cast a wide net with what they read, if they read novels and comics, they're going to be at home with what we have. Those who are maybe just more comic books, they may be interested in just grabbing the comics because we write them in a way they kind of stand on their own, but you probably want to go back and get the origin stories, get the more depth of the world building and the characters that we have. Um, so with that being said, what we like to do is just bring people through that whole progression. So if you go to our website, on our online store, you will get a chance to buy those comics with those companion novels that we have as well.
All
And
right,
if
cool.
you want, if you're just a artist out there who wants to get your work out, you want to work with us, there's links on our website to our socials with Facebook and Instagram. You'll be able to go there. You can message me there's a link for me through the website because mainly you'll get to Cosby Media Productions, which is Cosby Media Production on IG. Then you'll see there's a link right in the bio that takes you to Starchild Comics and me as well. So hit me up, say, hey man, I want to work with you guys. What do I have to do? We'll probably ask you to send us some of your works that you've already done before. And if you link up with the style that we think matches our great writers, then we'll partner you guys up and go into a commission.
Nice, cool. Yeah, no, that's pretty awesome. I mean, you have a long list, so we got to break it down and kind of go through it. So let's
Absolutely.
let's start from the beginning. Okay, let's go way back. I love to do this because it kind of takes the stage as to like what drew you to comics. So when you were younger, and you were just starting out as a young buck, and you were like, listen, I gotta do something with myself in life. What was the first thing that you thought of when you wanted to actually go into the work field?
My first I first stumbled into well, my first fascination with comics happened with the Sunday Funnies. It was an old TV show back in the day, probably way older than you. And and it was just like a show that happened on Sunday and they just had like they just talked about comics and they had like the strips. They would just literally just like move across a screen and show you comics. So all of that was really DC. DC was actually bigger than Marvel at that time. So that was the stuff I followed. Then I came home and I would look at like the Justice League, or they called them the Super Friends back then. And
Hmm.
then Spider-Man started kind of coming out. Then it was Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends. Then it was X-Men. So all those guys I just got bombarded with, and once a week wasn't enough, so I started diving into comics, getting comic books, so I can actually see the stories in another, told in another way. So, of course, I remember being in the sixth grade and a friend of mine was a really good artist and he said, man, I started writing this comic book. And I was like, really, what was it about? So he was more like into Dungeons and Dragons. So he
Hmm.
had some little fantasy characters. I was like, that's really, really cool. So what did you do? And he would just show me you draw a square and put the characters in there or whatever. So I decided to do my own comic. I ended up doing like a 6-page comic of some characters who I haven't written yet, but they actually are going to start with my next edition. And I just got it done. It was a 6-page comic. I thought it was really cool, kind of emulated exactly what I was seeing going on with like the X-Men because that was my jam back in the day. And so that was my first foray into comics. And then of course in 2010 was when I wrote my first novel, which was Protostar, and that was published by a small publisher down here in Atlanta. A year later, I had won multiple awards for it. It was young adult sci-fi. And then she decided to get out of the business. She gave me the rights back. I picked it up, shopped around to another publisher, got it picked up with a literary agent, was really excited, working on the sequel. And then something along the way just didn't sit right with me. I started thinking like, man, this feels so restrictive. I want to do some other things with the cover. I want to do some things with the storyline. And I just wasn't getting that support and feedback that I wanted. And so I basically, broke contract with them, got my
Hmm.
rights back, and decided just to do this thing myself. And ever since, like I said, we've never put out an open submission. We do it strictly, look like it seemed at this point, by word of mouth, where people are just saying, hey, I want to publish with you. Here's my story. What do you think? And then when they publish with us, they say, I got a friend who wants to do it. And if we take them on, so it's just been this cycle of just taking in the first 3 chapters with a synopsis, tell me your story, and we take them on if we find an interest that we think could be next level. It's not just about publishing a book, but it's possibly, can we go into TV? Can we go into short film? Can we go into big film? Can we go into limited series? We're always looking at the potential of our stories to be that because we do a lot of series and we feel
Hmm.
like, hey, it's just a matter of time before somebody comes along who wants to actually fund this thing and get some of these projects off the ground.
So when it comes to like your first book, right? I want to make sure that we built the groundwork for people. We have enough time.
Hmm.
Um, So, like, take me through the premise of what drew you to that book and ultimately writing it. Like, what was your inspiration? Was it something that you were speaking on life and then kind of emulated to fiction,
Right.
or was it something else like that?
It was crazy because my journey in writing was like I took creative writing classes and things like that. I was always interested in writing essay format style, basically work. I didn't like multiple choice tests. I would kind of second guess myself a lot of times. I think I had the right answer, and I didn't. I get the test back, and I realized I took the wrong path, even though I knew the answer. And I felt like I never really was able to express what I knew. So, towards the end of my career, I got into physical therapy school, and a lot of that was essay format. So, I was acing stuff, and all the way through undergrad, I was ace. Any classes that I took that were essay based format, I got an A in it. And it didn't matter if it was world history, whatever job, I was just mastering. So I knew that that was kind of my skill set, is that I could explain things very well. And when I got out of school, I remember I was at church one day and the pastor was preaching. He was like, man, I feel like God wants to use some people out there in the pews to do some things, maybe something you've never done before, but nobody's really asking. And I started going, man, okay, well, shoot, well, what would you have me do, God? I just remember praying. I got real quiet and silent, and all of a sudden I heard this voice say, write a book. And I'm like, about what? And so I don't know about you, but I'm like a big movie buff. I would always go look at movies and some things that would go on in the movie. I'm like, man, that was good, but I kind of wish they went this way with the story, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
this big action sequence would have been cool. What I was expecting was a little bit higher than what they were delivering. And so God was like, take all that cool stuff and then put it in your own story. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, okay. And then I started just kind of scripting out this one little story that was just in my head about this um, prince bounty hunter from another galaxy sent on a mission to come to Earth and assassinate this girl who had special quality because she was actually a child of his son. Star Children. Before you know it, we got this whole thing going. I do comics. I do Starchild comics. So all of it just kind of a nice, beautiful continuum. And I got that story written in 90 days, and then the rest was history. So. Um, I kind of just said it was a God-breathed thing. I felt like I had this calling of being a healer, not just with my profession of physical therapy, but with my brain as well and my fingers, and writing stories that I really feel speak to people, speak to their heart, and hopefully do something to transform them, to make them inspired to go out and accomplish their dreams as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's important to kind of get the background, right? To see kind of
Hmm.
like what drew you into comics. Some people have said they got drawn into comics because they like just the genre. You're saying, because based on a feeling like you had that something drew you to it.
Right.
So there's always these different backgrounds. So it's great to hear kind of like what brought you into the comic book world. Like for me, it was literacy. The only way I learned how to read was because of books,
Very
like
cool.
comic books specifically. I couldn't
That's
read
right.
novels. It's
That's
very
right.
hard for me.
That's right.
ADHD, you gotta love it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
So when we're talking about this, and kind of like why I'm doing these interviews is to kind of pick up those stories and kind of get a lot of the things that you did to eventually become the publisher that you are, and to really draw to the writing that you've done. So take me through kind of like some of these other books that you're either A, working on right now, or
Right.
or B, have already written and then kind of you built it into this new uh Star Child universe, if you will.
Right, right. Well, so it's interesting because you brought up that that doorway, that pathway for you to get into reading was like with comic books, and that's exactly what I did when I started doing the Star Cross Saga, which is books. Book one is Protostar, book two Supernova, book three Solstice. They were really aimed more towards females just because there was a nice little romance in there. And, that around the time that they came out was like when the Divergent series was out, Twilight was out. So obviously that was something that girls were like flocking to. So they were like
Mhm.
reading this stuff like crazy.
He sparkles.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what William did with these solar panels on his skin. So I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And what I ended up doing was start going, man, how do I get the boys to read now? How do I really get them fired up? And superheroes. It was the
Mhm.
easiest way. And especially at that time, it was when Marvel was really starting to bang out these movies. They had the Iron Mans and the Spider-Man. Everything was starting, the whole Marvel universe was starting to be created. So it was like, okay, let's jump in here. Let's offer him something. And I remember at that time we already bought on Keyshawn Dodds, and he's on his fifth book of the Menzuo saga now. We had Lawrence St. John, who has got his Metatron series. He's working on the fifth book now. Kaio Champion with his Majesties of Canaan series. He's got two books with the comic. And we also have Daniel Payton with the Bark series. So we were all working on these superhero stories, and we just started referencing all of our characters in the same United Universe. And then, like I said, in 2020, 21 was when we decided to finally do comic books to expand those stories. But the gateway for me to reach young men was superheroes, and that's the books that they read. That's the stuff they were excited about. The covers spoke to them. They would go in and read them. It was simple reading, just more about in-depth characters, but not so over the head, not as advanced like science fiction would be, where it might go over your head. It was just these nice stories that told the hero's journey. Just with they just happen to be superheroes, you know.
Mhm.
And so that was the way that I wanted to kind of skew my writing, is to say heavy superheroes for the guys, and the proto stars, supernova, and all that stuff for the young ladies. Although the guys can get in and dig it too. So as you talk about series, we've got superhero series. Like I said, we got the Cape series, books 1, 2, and 3 of my
Mhm.
Cape series, 1, and 2. We also have comic books for the Cape series. We've got Cape Hellfire, which was illustrated by a wonderful artist from Brazil named Bruno Abias. He's gone on to actually do the Cyborg series for DC. And
Nice.
also Marcelo Salazar, he's done some other comic books for us as well. And he ended up doing the sequel, The Fabulous Five, to the Cape series. So again, all in all, you've got like 5 books from the Cape series. And it just gives people something to pick up and get excited about. So I'm always writing and adding to that universe as we build it out.
Yeah. Uh, so I'm on your website now, trying to peruse. So take me through some of your characters, because I mean there are a plethora of different characters that you've introduced, especially on the Starchild side. Take me through their like capabilities or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
lack thereof. If I don't
Yeah,
know.
so if you're talking about superheroes, my strongest superhero in my universe is this young lady here named Blur. She actually started off as and I kind of started off the cape started off as somewhat of a joke, because I went in and I tried to make characters that had like silly names, and then it ended up taking on a mind of its own, where things got so serious that the names and the characters kind of took a backseat to just the storyline and the stakes that were there and everything. So she started off as what we call Cheetah Girl. She was always a speedster, and she actually rolled with the bad guys initially, until she kind of had like a change of heart through this connection she had with Paladin right here, and realized that she kind of knew him from before and middle school and stuff like that. And she was always a troublemaker. She got caught in the wrong crowds. And now it was like him being his voice, kind of calling her out of what she was doing with the group called Dark Phase. So
So the good guy bringing the bad girl from the dark side to the good.
absolutely,
All right.
absolutely. And plus, he ended up being like a love interest of hers. So he's always had a crush on her. He knew her from middle school, but of course, he's behind the mask, and she never knows who he is until later on in the book and stuff. So she's a speedster. She's also what they call a conduit, though. She can her visions actually take her in the future and the past. So there's a huge story arc that goes with that.
Mhm.
Paladin is like I said, that's just the other character here. He's just got a super suit. It's called the S4, and everything is really intuitive with the AI that's embedded in it. So he had normally in the beginning he had to change the breastplates to change the phases. He can go from stealth to super strength and to invisibility, speed, invisibility, and strength, and then eventually he kind of improved the tech over time. And the fourth variant of the suit was that it was intuitiveness. So before he moves, the suit kind of guessed what move he was going to make.
Ultra
So
instinct, baby. Let's go.
that's right, that's right. So he had all of that going. And then, of course, we have Thief, which is actually the most powerful superhero in my universe, arguably, because if you get within 100 feet of him, he can actually mimic your powers. He gets exactly what you got. So if he was around
Okay.
Superman, he would be Superman again.
Okay.
And so
So
that's kind of how
he picks up all the capabilities, not just the fighting style, right? So
everything.
he's a taskmaster with superpowers.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So yeah, so with that in mind, like when the story of the Cape comes around, it's basically year 2035, and the city of Chicago is still overrun by crime, even worse than it is. The storm comes to the city one day, and whoever's caught in the storm, the next day they wake up with superpowers. Some use them for good, some for evil. You get these two groups now, these two factions. You got Dark Phase, which are the bad guys, and you have the Capes, which are the good guys. And they're slowly picking off each other one by one over time, and they finally make like a secret truce, like, hey, you guys stay over there, we'll stay over here. Just agree to keep this thing going. The city actually adopts the Capes and makes them like celebrities, puts them in high rises, gives them celebrity endorsements, the whole 9 yards, and just says, hey, just keep the city safe. And they pretty much do that. But the one rule you cannot break is that you cannot harm a human. And one day, the most powerful superhero thief actually comes on television and actually admits that he actually not only harmed a human, but he killed him. And
Mm.
so this first book becomes this murder mystery as to why he did it, how they're going to bring him to justice. Of course, Darkface now wants to recruit him. The authorities want to bring him to justice, and the Capes actually want to find him too because now you're messing up our gig. We may have to kill you. And so it becomes this whole murder mystery story, and it unravels, throughout the book, and then that leads us into the second book, which gets even crazier, where there's this comet that is on a collision course with planet Earth about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, and
Okay.
it's made of nothing but um, precious metals, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, everything, and it's worth $1 quintillion. So you tell me how much is a quintillion?
More than I can count.
If you take the number one and you add 14 zeros behind it, that's
Yeah.
a quintillion. So
Yeah.
at this point, you
It's
can
more than
imagine.
Elon Musk, I could say that.
Right. Every country in the world is vying for this thing when it hits the planet because they know that it could tip the balance of power. And the United States identifies that, and they um, actually bring the capes in and commission them to, when it hits, find it, put it in the shuttle that they've built, and send it into the sun so nobody has it. So that becomes like the whole thing. It's called overdrive, where all their powers are starting to kind of evolve. And that's where Cheetah Girl has now moved into Blur, and Blur's having these visions and things are going on. So the capes actually have to go into overdrive, where I start to the city of Chicago is almost like a petri dish, right? Because it has all these people who have superpowers, but half of them are probably not even coming out anymore because they're afraid to be either killed by the Capes or killed by Darkface. So you can just keep plucking new heroes out over and over again, new villains over and over again, as they come out. And so I introduce more villains in the second book, and then that takes us into the other novels that actually where we have like a little team up with me, characters from Keyshawn Dodds and Kyle Champion, and that's our Avengers Assemble, which is Infinity Seven. So you'll
Mhm.
see books one and two of that series, and that leads us into Cape Two, the Fabulous Five, where these guys kind of hand the mantle down to the youngins to let them do their thing, almost like a young Justice.
Okay. That's cool, man. So the continuity is there, the storyline's there, and it sounds, worth a read.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like for me, these are all exciting things because I work every day. So by the time I actually get to sit down and actually read something, it's like a newspaper instead of reading the
absolutely.
fun stuff. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So for kids, that want to like venture into the world of fantasy, you don't have to just pick Marvel or DC. You have all these other different capabilities of
Absolutely.
learning from these different characters. And it kind of inspires kids to come up with their own characters, right? So
Hmm.
it's something where you can kind of find that ultimate balance, if you will, in your
Yeah,
life. Like, sometimes you're that nerd and you gotta be that superhero in your life because you were always the nerd and
that's
you want
right.
to find that girl that
Yeah,
you wanted to meet and stuff like that. So it's really cool and interesting.
yeah.
So, when it comes to a lot of these books and characters and stuff like that, and ultimately getting it together, have you ever had like people at any of the cons like dress up as the characters for you and say, "Hey, I'm Blur," stuff like that?
We haven't gotten to that level yet. We haven't gotten to that level yet, but definitely people submit, comic art and things like that
Okay.
of the characters they like. What I've done, because I do a lot of speaking author visits down here in Georgia at some of the high schools and middle schools, and I normally try to rope in. I did this one time, one of the elementary writing assignment, where we say create your own character, 5 sentence story on what that character would be like, what they would do, and whatever. And man, it's been some fantastic little stories coming out of these kids' minds. So it's great because we have an initiative that we have on our with our company. We call it Rediscover Reading, which
Mhm.
is basically trying to take people who have kind of let reading fall by the wayside, and I guess predominantly letting social media become what they play around and enjoy most days,
They take that as their literacy.
or TV shows and movies, and there's no more reading. So we want people to rediscover it because I can tell you from personal testimony of mine, being in college, going through bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, I didn't have a lot of free time to read anything for pleasure. So I kind of got away from it too, you know? And then when I was in like high school and middle school, they made us read books that I didn't identify with anybody in those
Mhm,
stories. You know,
mhm.
I clung to things like Ray Bradbury Fahrenheit 451 because I thought it was amazing. You know, but when they made me read things like Silas Marner and How to Build a Fire, I was like, whose stories are these? You know, so I had an aversion to reading, and it wasn't until I got out and I started becoming a writer that I dove back in again because you have to read the types of stories that you write in order to understand the voice and the beats and how those stories go about, you know. So I started going diving into some great books. I'm like, oh my God, I left all this fiction behind by doing all this nonfiction stuff, you know. And so I wanted to kind of bring that full circle. And so that's what our Rediscover Reading initiative is. It's getting people, whether it's kids or adults, back into reading again. And this becomes our doorway. That's why I'm really a stickler about the stories that we write, where it's not just comic books with great art, but there's some great stories in there that are going to drive you to the next page, even more than some of the art would.
Nice. Now, speaking of cons and kind of like you going through these initiatives, where can we find you next?
Well, Heroes Con in June.
Okay.
Also be going back to, let me see, I'll read up my list because I've had some late editions here, which is actually really exciting. We got Heroes Con in June, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, Atlanta Comic Con down in Atlanta in July, which is going to be fantastic.
Nice and warm.
Um, we
That's
got
good.
um, I'll be doing I co-wrote a children's book with my daughter, my 12-year-old, which is just fabulous. And she's the title character, Sophia, and the castaway creatures in the mythical enchanted land of Safe. That one, we're doing a book signing in Liberty Books down in Atlanta, and down in Lawrenceville, Georgia. We've also got Anniverse Anniverse, Chattanooga, Tennessee, at the end of August, and the Dahlonega Book Festival in September. We got Incredible Con in Charleston, South Carolina, and then we'll be doing a Southern Festival of Books in October with Tennessee, and finishing up with Anime Weekend down in December in Atlanta. So we're booked the rest of this year. I'm really excited about getting because we just dropped the Cape 2, and we also have the series Broken, which is this beautiful young lady behind me, Keisa Donovan, dystopian story, with the novel being book one. The comic is book two with wonderful art by Ram Silva and the colors and letters by Julio Caballero. And we also have the graphic novel, which is book three of the story with the same artist working on it too. So I'm just excited about getting those things out to everybody because when we made our first rounds, we had the novels. Now we're bringing those comics and the graphic novels. So I know the people who came before it is going to be excited and thrilled to get on board with what we got next.
Yeah, I mean, um, when you go to like a comic and it's a short story, usually and it like leaves a cliffhanger, and then you
Hmm.
have the graphic novel, which is a more expanded story
Hmm.
and kind of like almost a movie in of it
Yeah,
itself. You know,
absolutely.
how do you find the balance between the two? Like, is it more like you just on this episode we're gonna do like a really quick one to kind of entice them and then capture them in with the graphic novel? Like, what's the game plan?
I tell you, it doesn't change for me. For me, I'm still telling a great story. So the
Mhm.
novel, of course, I know I have a lot of free room to roam in a novel. You know, 80,000 words, 90,000 words, 100. You could just keep writing. I'm a stickler for three-act structure. So I'm going to have that first act scripted out. I'm going to have those characters introduced. The world is introduced. The character is going to, the main protagonist is going to be um, challenged with the question of going on the quest, whatever it is. Once he accepts it, he or she accepts it, they go into Act Two. Then we get into that. We start playing around with all the peaks and valleys of trying to accomplish one goal, failing, dropping down, trying again, and keep going up and down until you get to the midpoint of the story where you think he's either won or lost.
Mhm.
Once that's over with, we start to move forward where we get to the section where it's like a come to Jesus moment where that character pretty much is faced with everything has been lost. What do you do now? They get up a new plan. They figure out what they're going to do, tighten up their bootstraps, and go in for the final push into Act Three, where they probably meet that problem, that challenge head on, or that antagonist. And then there's some kind of a resolution. Now, obviously, when we have continuums of stories with books one, book two, book three, you might not meet the final end or destination of that hero's journey right then, but there's going to be something that's going to leave you hanging, like you said, into the next book. So the only difference for me is that it's how if that story, if that three act structure is going to be this big, or this big.
Mm-hmm.
Where I might with the novel, it's obviously much wider, but the comic is a little bit faster. It moves faster. You got Broken Book Two was the comic book was like 24 pages, and then
Mm-hmm.
we ended up getting into a 60-page graphic novel after that with book three. So I had a lot more to play with. I could throw a little bit more of my focus into the world building, the characterization, making those characters much more heavy in 360 degrees as opposed to the comic. The second one, I had a lot of playtime, so I was able to really have some fun with the zombies and the action sequences a little bit more. Still focusing on that three act structure though.
Nice. So there are zombies. I was going to ask that next question.
That is yes.
All right.
We call them ashers in our world, but they are zombies because this is a moment where the entire world has been bombarded by a nuclear storm.
Mhm.
We don't know who pressed the button first, but it's all out nuclear war. 70% of the population is decimated. People go to the coastlines for fresh water, trying to rebuild their lives and pick up the pieces. Money has no value anymore. So now, like I said, the tagline in the book is, in a world with in a world that's been turned upside down, the only uh, um, money is a human, one basically. So um, it says, in the time of a failed one world order economy, the only viable currency is a human one. So basically, this military corporation called the establishment, steps up and decides that they're going to run the planet over all the continents by just trading people as currency. So it's a class-based thing. It has
Hasn't
nothing to
happened
do
before at all.
right. But this is class-based. So we're
Yeah.
not looking at black, white, whoever. It's you have no resources, we're using you, we're monetizing you.
Okay.
And so that's what
So
they're
kind of
doing.
like a Ready Player One, but like worldwide.
Absolutely. So now they're basically just enslaving people, keeping them in these camps, in these precincts across the United States, and they have all the money and the muscle so they can do it. And basically, they have the people work the land, they take on jobs, and it's all free labor, and they can just do what they want. And so Kisa now is a 16-year-old girl. She's been separated from her parents with the nuclear war, and now she's been forced to live in what we call a slave pod in Savannah, Georgia. And she is now the surrogate parent of her younger brother named Kieran, who's 11 years old. And if it wasn't for Kieran still being alive, Kisa's been put through so much. 16-year-old girl losing everything, no boyfriend, no friends, separation from all of the world that she knew, no prom, no anything. She's ready to kill herself. She's ready to go. The only thing that's anchoring her to humanity right now in her existence is her little brother and being that parent to make sure that he stays safe.
Mm-hmm.
But of those 70% of people who are destroyed, there's 30% left. Of those, half of those people have ingested the nuclear fallout. Most everybody has ingested it at some point in time, but something happens to half of them. They turn into what we call ashers, which are these zombies who are not mindless zombies. They actually move as a hive mind, and they're fast, and they're very calculated in what they do. Another percentage of these people who have survived are called hoarders. Kind of like imagine the Mad Max or like Borderlands video game, the wild
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
They ravage the land for resources. They kill you on sight, and then
The hills have eyes type of deal.
absolutely. And
Okay.
the last bit, 1% of the population who survived are what we call alphas. They have ESP, certain sight visions of the future, past, everything coming together, and they will probably be the key to bringing the world back into order. And we have hints that Kisa may be an alpha.
Okay.
So you've got all these people. You've got the warring factions of the establishment, the Ashers, the Hoarders, and now you're getting these rumblings of a resistance against all of it, who's trying to stop humanity from destroying itself. And that's who Kisa is being reached out to now in the slave pod, and she has to make the decision if she's going to go on the quest to try to join them and leave the life behind that she has come to know.
Yeah, she has a calling or something's drawing her to this destiny that she has.
Yep.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, these things are kind of like interesting how they're convoluted and they kind of like they draw out things and you can kind of speak to it, right? Because I mean, we're in a world where these things could possibly either have
At any
happened,
time.
could happen,
Yes.
or could possibly happen. So,
Yep.
and you don't know what's going to happen because, of course, it hasn't happened yet, and hopefully it doesn't. Nuclear fallout, of course.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's important to kind of delve out some of the ideas, and you never know. It's a multiverse in the real world, right? So somewhere in some other universe, that your book could be going through that iteration right now.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of capture the audience, right? So who are you speaking to as a writer? Are you speaking to a children? Because I know with zombies it can sometimes get scary.
Right.
But superheroes, and then you also have the other characters that you had where they're not necessarily like they're more like the Twilight characters, if you will.
Right.
So like, what's your audience like level?
I think I've always been as a young adult writer because young adult to me it can go from anywhere. It can go from like 12 to 100,
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of have that same voice in most of my stories, but I consider myself a writer for everybody because I feel like if you're older, you may be young at heart. And I meet people all the time. They're like, I'm 60 years old, but I love reading young adult. I know some 12-year-olds who just, oh, she's reading on a 11th grade level, so then they can go into it too. But I work with a company called Metametrics who actually grades and scores our books for us. And so I always know when they get through doing it, they'll say, hey, this is probably skewed towards 12 to 15 or 8 and up, so they always let us know. So when we go to the schools, we can give them that Lexile score and they
Mm-hmm.
know the audience for the book so that we're getting kids the right books to read.
Yeah.
And I try to keep them clean from any sex or curse, and I have some fictitious curse words in there in my sci-fi stuff. But for the most part, there are some zombies heads being ripped off, so
Okay.
we
Yeah.
got to respect the gore that is in there.
Yeah. No, I mean, we kind of live in a world where a lot of people are desensitized to a lot of this stuff. So
Hmm.
I can kind of understand a lot of the zombie stuff because even in cartoons they have in like the Young Justice League there's blood in some cases
Right.
and not necessarily like gore, but they have all these movies out like Five Nights at Freddy's as a
Right.
video
Right.
game, and then it also goes into a movie. I'm sure that a lot of kids have watched that. I know my 15-year-old takes a look at it all the time. So it's something that you could gravitate away from it, but it's a good thing that you really concentrate more on the storyline than kind of fulfilling these like brackets, if you will.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I wanted to also, it's kind of blatant, as a black owned business and
Hmm.
also a business owner who's now also an African American writer.
Hmm.
Um, you're inspiring children who look like you, who possibly didn't come up the same way that you did,
Right.
that doesn't have necessarily that inspiration. How do your books kind of, and kind of like your story, really inspire
Hmm.
these new creators to kind of come out there and really show that they can come to be something different than just what people want them to be?
Right. I've always enjoyed about writing science fiction, which is why it's my wheelhouse, is that I find that science fiction is so intriguing because it really doesn't dig into ethnicity as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as important. So, for example, I used to look at Star Trek, and Gene Roddenberry was very forward thinking. X-Men, Stan Lee. He basically said that like, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were basically Charles Xavier and Magneto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of that was in there, and there was a movement. There was an importance of pushing diversity and inclusion along so that people just start to get over themselves, you know?
Hmm.
So I always felt that with science fiction, there was always a bigger problem than just who was black and white.
Yeah,
The
right.
world, there might be an alien invasion that's going to destroy the planet. Let's just put that past us right now and figure out how to. So they always
And
had a
and it's always that's just all we need, and it's crazy.
something greater than just that stuff that we're
Yeah,
so stuck on. So
yeah.
I always had an appreciation for that. So in my writing, yes, you see there's black characters, but there's also other characters who are support characters as well. My thing is that if I have an opportunity to tell a story, I have an obligation to tell a story that one is written well, two, that people who are like me can relate and find something, but also have a responsibility to make it that anybody can pick it up and enjoy it. And that's how my audiences are. They just come and read it like, oh, wow. Nobody sits here, no Caucasian person picks up and goes, oh, that's a black person. They go, oh, what's it about?
Yeah,
Because they're science fiction fans.
yeah.
They might get Still Rain, Black Bounty Hunter. You haven't read that yet.
Hmm.
But they look through the pages and they go, "Oh man, this looks really good." And that's what they're intrigued by. So my thing is like when it comes down to telling stories and getting good works out, it really just comes down to that. But I do have the obligation to make sure that my kids see characters they relate with. Kisa is a amalgamation of my three daughters' personalities. And they're
Oh, okay.
separated by like 5 years. So I got 22, 18 now, and 12. And there's pieces of all their personalities in this one girl. And I dedicated the Broken series to my girls because I wanted to give them something. So I'm writing it from a first person perspective, a man trying to be a female and understand what goes on in the minds of women. And so that's what I tried to do. I just tried to bring everything I knew from them, being a father to them, and put them in this story and saying, hey, if my girls were in a world where it got turned upside down, how would they handle it? And
Hmm.
that's what continues to drive me with my writing.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, the big thing is it's always something that speaks to you, right? Like if I wanted to write a book, I'd write about a Puerto Rican, trying to get back to the island, or
That's right.
living in the Bronx or
That's
whatever,
right.
because that's where I'm based out of, and that's kind of like where my
Hmm.
life was. So,
Hmm.
that's why I wanted to make sure that people heard this, because it's important that they don't feel like they have to meet these certain stigmas.
That's
They
right.
can they can really diversify their landscape and
Hmm.
still be able to tell the story that they want to
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Story is story. It's the fools out there who get caught up with what color is the person. I'm not going to see that. I'm not going to read that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And to your point, one of the biggest gifts I ever got when I got into writing was that somebody told me, "You write what you're an expert in." And you are a Puerto Rican male. You're an expert at being a
I
Puerto
try to
Rican
be.
male.
I try to be. I try.
You know what I mean? I mean, you've been living in that skin forever, right? So you
Yeah.
know what it is when you walk down the street and people look at you one way or the other. You know what it is when you try to get a business loan and somebody says, that's you. So if you write from that and your experiences, I'm writing a historical fiction story now, right? And it's amazing. I love the stuff. But I had to actually pull history because it's history, historical, and I have the fictional parts that I'm writing to be the glue to bring it together. So I'm not an expert in being a historian, but it is a black character. And I do know how the world sees black characters. So I can
Hmm.
write that. And I can just continue to glue this thing together and bring those action elements that I feel like only I can do because I love that stuff. So you just write from where your heart is, man. And if you're an expert in that in your heart, your stories are going to come across and people are going to enjoy it. I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, and I give this advice to writers when I do conventions and panels and things like that. I say, write what you love. Make sure it's your next favorite story. If you love it, then it's your best work, then you're good. Don't try to write somebody else's. Have your own voice and say, when you're done, man, I really love this story because somebody else is probably going to like it too.
Yeah. No, so I was going to ask you that question. What's your like your thought of, if you had to give the younger person, the next person that's going to be you, right? I mean, of course, nobody could necessarily be you, but if you wanted to
Absolutely.
inspire them,
Right, right.
how exactly, like, what advice would you give them? So you kind of already
You
answered that
write from the
question,
heart, man, and make
but
it your next favorite story.
yeah, if you want to elaborate, that's up to you. But but no, the other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, and this is kind of like important because you're a publisher, so, and a writer. So like, how do you go through the process of finding those artists, finding those co-writers or colorists or what have you to kind of get these books together? Like, what's your process?
We've been blessed, honestly, man, that people have just come to us. Now, when I first got the publishing off the ground, we did a Kickstarter to get to do our first four comics, with our first four issue comics with Bark, the Cape, Majesties of Canaan. No, I'm sorry, Majesty of Canaan wasn't in it. It was Bark, the Cape, Metatron, and Menzuo. I talked to a couple of creatives who I had met at some conventions. Shout out to Tyler, the animator with Godhood Comics. He got me in contact with a couple of people, and that's where I got Bruno. And then met some other creatives through all of that and got those folks involved with those comics. So we ended up working with a total of three creators over four comics. And after that, it was just like once that IG handle went up and we're starting to post, people DMing you, hey, I got this. Can I do this with you? I got this. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. You know what I mean? And so after that, we ended up having that information was there. So we would just had a catalog. Hey, this person showed me some of their art, man. What do you think? It's kind of like this. Okay, well, I like that. Let's partner them with so and so. So that's just how the artistry went.
Yeah.
And then we get their information and we put it on our website. So when people go click on Starchild Comics, they can actually scroll down and see these artists and what comics they've worked on with us, and see how they've expressed their art.
Oh, nice. I mean, it's not always that easy because I mean, running a con myself, I'm trying to look for a guest artist, and it's like either you get the really big ones that are like super expensive, or you got
Right.
the locals that want to support you, and you're like, do I add them as a guest? Do I add them as a vendor? I don't know.
Right.
You have
Right.
to make those choices, but they don't come out of the work where you got to go searching for them. So the
Absolutely.
fact that you had
Absolutely.
them coming to you is great. One of the big things I always like to ask people as we come to like towards the end of the interview is if you had the capability of turning a book or a novel into a movie, one, which one would it be? And then second part of this is if you had the main character of that book to be able to cast them, who would you cast?
Okay. So I'll give it to you twofold. What I do with just my series. So we've got Star-Crossed Saga, we've got the Capes, and then we've got Broken. For me, I know I would want Broken to be like a limited series.
Mhm.
Like, I want it to be like 2 season limited series, almost like an Andor.
Mhm.
The Cape could be like, I would love if like the people who did like the old WB just like Arrowverse and stuff, if they
Yeah,
did
yeah.
that, because I could see that same tone, shot the same, the whole nine yards. And if I did Star-Crossed Saga, it would just be movies. It would be three movies, boom, boom, boom. And back in the day, I had like people who I wanted to play like Sydney. I wanted to have what's the girl's name? Gosh, just Selena Gomez.
Okay.
Would be like Sydney, and then I guess back then I had like William. It was something like because this book is older now, so I'm trying to think of like who I would cast back then. That those actors have kind of come and gone, but it would be that kind of thing. And if I did now, like with the Cape, I would see like a Michael B. Jordan maybe being like Paladin, and kind of like like Henry Cavill would be a fantastic thief. And then I really love what Journey Smollett is doing now, so I would actually cast her as the Blur and things like that. So I've got all these characters. I would easily just plug people into them. If I had a chance to doing like Steel Rain, I would do something really crazy, like maybe get like LeBron James to be Steel Rain, and
Okay.
so just kind of go another way and let the story speak for it rather than the actors, and just get other personalities involved.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, it would be like I like to put stuff out in the universe, right? Because you never know.
That's
Somebody
right.
could
That's
somebody could
right.
stumble on this interview and they'd be like, "Yo, he was interested in casting me to this.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
should
yeah.
contact him and have my agent talk to his,
That's right. That's
get it
right.
started." So, I really, I really appreciate you allowing me to interview you, Braxton. It's been an honor. I definitely want to make sure that people capture, all the things that you guys do. So definitely check out their website. I'm actually on it right now, checking out, what's going on. So that way I could kind of give you guys a story as to kind of like the new releases are right there, right in your face. So it's like right and easy. Um, is there any final words that you would want to leave somebody that either is an aspiring artist or an aspiring writer and they want to get into the business or they want to work with you or anything like that? What would you tell them other than that, that basic line that you were given, but like final words and hey, you should come talk to me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say honestly, for fans of comics, novels, science fiction, fantasy, anything like that, our slogan for Starchild Comics is "Come and play in our worlds." We've got a ton of worlds to come play around in. So if you, as an artist, uh, want to come and draw and illustrate those worlds that we're creating, come on over. We have a contact us tab on our website. You can click on that, or you can, catch up with us on social media. That's fine. If you're a writer, that contact us, say, hey, I got something I want to submit to you all. I want to build in the worlds that you guys already have. And I even have more of a unique world that I like to bring on myself. We just dropped our manga, our first manga series from Chris Macaulay. We have the Nexus Astrum Origins, which is the novel, and Nexus Astrum Awakening, which is the comic, and they run parallel with each other in a 30-year time gap. So we have like the original mechs, the big fighting robots that they first started with the technology in Nexus Astrum. Now we got the fancier ones. So you can imagine some of those like the slower moving Battletech mech warrior types of mechs, and now we've got the real fancy
Gundams. You
kind of
got
Gundam
Gundams.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we're always looking to add and build in new worlds, and I get excited about them. I executive produce both of those novels personally myself, and I will have the novel and the comic at the conventions that I go to this year. So I'm thrilled.
That's awesome. And first and foremost, I want to make sure that you send me all the links so that way when we publish this video, we can capture all that stuff. And at the very least, people, if you see this man, and you see his links, just give him a follow. That's the free thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's the easy thing to do, is just to give it a like, a follow, a subscribe. And then from there, check out their pages, because independent artists can't become the next Marvel, can't become the next DC
Right.
or Image Comics without your support. So, people like Braxton and just, independent artists all in general, writers, they need the support, because without that support and that love of reading and the comic books and fiction, you're not going to be able to see the great things that they're putting out, one,
Right.
and then two, they can't continue to do what they're doing. So you never get to finish the story without the support of you guys, the fans. And that being said, that's why we run Icon Comic Con. So if you're around Fishkill, New York, November the 1st, and you want to party with us, it's at the Fishkill Rec Center. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have over 50 vendors there. We have 2 voice actors, possibly 3. I'm still not finished yet. And then we have like comic book artists, and we have a CGC facilitator there. We make it fun. We make it for the collector. We also make it for the person that's inspiring to get into comics. You definitely want to come and stop by. Again, that's November the 1st. It's for all fandom, right? So, Braxton, thank you again. I can't thank you enough for allowing me to interview you. You guys got to check out Behind the Comic Book podcast, man, because we are getting some awesome people here. It's giving inspirational, you know what I'm saying? So it's something that helps people understand that you don't just have to do your 9 to 5. You could do a 9 to 5 and do something else that you are inspired to do, right? So it's some awesome hustling. And Braxton, again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, man. You guys are great, and I'm hoping the best for you with that comic convention, and that you guys just get everybody in there and getting to know your artists and your guests and your patrons. So best to you guys in November.
All right, awesome, man. Hey, this is Mr. 845, and we're hitting the streets. Check out our episodes every Monday, 12 p.m. All these episodes are going to be airing. Check them out.